we have to start taking that fight back to our plants and stop being afraid of people. Stop being afraid of our neighbors. I'll never forget on 9/11, and then it did repeat it again in 2003 when we had the blackout. I don't know if it got around all of the state of Michigan, but most of the East Coast, most of the western Pennsylvania, and West Virginia, and Ohio, and parts of Michigan was without power for about 2 days. And I remember sitting at home on my porch, and at the time my wife was pregnant with the twins, and I was sitting there looking around, and it was the first time that I actually seen every one of my neighbors. Everybody was home, and I was actually able to go out and talk to all of them and engage and interact. And it hit me for the first time, why hadn't I ever done it? When I was a kid, we had neighborhood block clubs, and we had parties, and I knew every one of my neighbors at every house from 2 blocks. I live in Detroit, and so the main street was 7 Mile. I could walk from 7 Mile to Pembroke and talk to everybody in there and know every home. But as an adult, a young adult, I didn't know but maybe one of my neighbors. And it hit me for the first time that that's my fault. I should be the one knocking on those doors. And not just because I'm running for a precinct delegate, not because I want something for people, just because they left their garbage can out too long, just because, hey, the dog was barking and I wanted to let them know that I took care of it or I did something. And it's no difference in our plants. We got to start engaging each other in our work sites. We have to engage each other in our workplaces and say, stop being afraid of each other. We really are. We really look at each other and say, yeah, you know what, that guy's crazy. And look, I'm not saying there aren't some special people that we work with. They are. I work with some every day, and I start wondering if I'm crazy or they're crazy or both. But the point that I'm saying to you is that we have to engage them anyway. There was people I just thoroughly disliked. I worked with a guy who was grumpy every day. I almost said his name, but I don't want to offend anybody. Every day he was grumpy. He was just as evil as he could be. I mean, every day at work he was mad about this, mad about that. And I'm not going to lie to you, I grew up a good Christian boy, but I hated him. I couldn't stand him. But you know what I realized? I was reading a book by Abraham Lincoln, and he said, I don't know that man. I hate that man. Let me get to know him. And the more I got to know that gentleman that I'll call Carl for now, the more I stopped disliking him. I found out that Carl, why he was so angry, is because he was mad because he had a full-ride scholarship. And he went down to the University of Alabama during the times when there wasn't very many blacks who had that. And he got thrown out of school because he got upset because somebody called him a choice name and he punched him in the mouth. And he never graduated with that college degree. But here I came in with a college degree, and I was getting preferential treatment, and people were talking about, "Ooh, look at the young smart guy." And I started to understand he wasn't mad at me. He was mad at what was going on in his life. And the more I studied Carl, I watched that Carl was working every ounce of overtime he could to put 3 daughters through school who never had to spend a nickel. And I couldn't dislike that man anymore. So even when he was grumpy, even when he was upset, it was easy for me to get past it because I knew what it was about. And the more time went on, the more friendly we got. Amazingly, Carl is retired and calls me about twice a week. And he's still grumpy. But he still calls me too. He still enjoys that relationship. And even though we thought we were different, we found out we had a lot in common. And that's the power of this union. That's the power of unions in general. And that's what the people who have the money don't want us to know. We have more in common than we'll ever have apart. And if we put down our bias, if we put down our differences, if we stop talking about that guy's white, this guy's black, this one was in the suburbs, this one was in the city, this one over here was that, this one over there was this, we'll find out that we're a lot alike.